ability to go off for 3 months at a time without working and just go on a backpacking trip or on a sailing trip or whatever comes my way.
And using the Simpleology Dreamcatcher, all I do is I take that incoming thought, throw it in the Dreamcatcher. It's not going to derail me from what I'm working on right now. And it's really important I can come back to it later on when I finish all my other tasks for the day.
But what I really want to say though is you could experience whatever you want to in your life as well. Simpleology can get you there. It's not like most forms of self-development where it's like you hear from the guru and he shows you how to emulate him. Well, if you've ever tried that, it usually doesn't make you any happier. Emulating the guru doesn't really work. What does work is finding out what you personally want and getting it. And that's where Simpleology comes in. No matter what your goal is, it shows you how to get there.
So, Simpleology has really helped me to streamline my daily business practices so that I'm working on consistent growth. And it's provided me a clear and consistent path towards operating a successful business.
And I can really attest to that because I've used it to achieve so many things, more than I could really list in a short period of time. And so I highly recommend it, not just to you, but I've recommended it to hundreds of people by now. I think so many people I meet while I'm traveling, anybody who's having a motivation problem or a problem with clarity about how to arrive at a goal, so many things. Simpleology is really your starting block. From there, you can take it in.
So I just want to say thank you to all the Simpleology staff for creating such an awesome program.
Hi, and so I've been using Simpleology now for a couple of years. It's fantastic. Initially I was just using it as to-do list and to keep me away from Outlook and multiple reminders and tasks and appointments, and just simplify my life in that kind of respect.
You log in every day. It's like getting into the cockpit of your plane and steering yourself where you want to go in life. I don't want you to view what I'm saying as just me talking about my success story. I want you to start thinking about your success story, the one that's on the way right now.
But more recently I've started using the more advanced features. So I've been tracking my progress to targets and trying to automate the actual to-do list creation process in the morning, which is fantastic.
I have been using Simpleology for several months now, and it has helped me with my daily organization and planning tremendously.
It saves me hours, it just keeps me focused and on point throughout the day.
I'm a PhD student, and as such I oftentimes have to work on ideas that are initially extremely vague. It's usually some intimidating task because of the lack of a clear path initially. Such situations can deter one from acting and lead to chronic procrastination. And this is where Simpleology comes in. Simpleology allows me to break through this initial paralysis and systematically chip away at large projects by focusing on tiny steps every single day.
Simpleology will free your brain from all those tasks floating around in your head. It'll help you prioritize because you know it's important. It'll keep the distractions at bay. And at the end of the day, you can look back and see what progress you made on what you needed to have done.
Simpleology allows me to create this temporary tunnel vision by focusing on the daily tasks only and ignoring the noise. The only thing that requires a little bit of effort is getting the habit of logging into your Simpleology account every morning, and that's not really much of an effort. The rest starts sorting itself out thereafter.
I'm pretty good without it, to be honest, but I think the main reason I keep using Simpleology is because of what happens when I don't use it on a regular basis. I'll start to become distracted. I'll start witzing around, doing things that are on my to-do list. Maybe the browsing, that kind of thing, and eventually I become totally unproductive and it all spirals down to a huge mess. And that's when I start to realise that I need to Simpleology back to my life. So yes, and that's why I'm going to keep on using it.
It's a fantastic product, and I highly recommend it.
All right, you guys, and we are live. How you doing? This is Mark Joyner and Ryan Healy, and welcome to the Simpleology Live Hangout. And tonight, this is really cool. We have got a topic here that Ryan picked, and he's got some really interesting insights to share with you. So tonight, we're going to talk about how to find out what you really want. Now, this might sound like, well, what do you mean how to find out what I really want? I know what I want. Well, I don't know. Maybe. Do you? Do you really know what you want, or are you walking around with a bunch of ideas that have been planted into your mind by other things? I'm going to kind of leave it right there and open it up to Ryan. I mean, I got a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm very curious as to what Ryan has to say, because he has an answer for this, a methodology that he has developed to help you find the answer to what I think maybe it's the most important question. It's got to be up there on one hand of the most important things.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think, man? Do you think is it that important to know?
I think it is. Years ago, I went through a whole bunch of Nightingale Conant programs, and back when they were big, and all of it, a lot of the advice hinged on, figuring out what you want.
Right.
And I remember when I was young and I was newly married, I'm like, well, I don't really know what I want. Like, got oceans of all this life in front of me, all this opportunity. I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that. And so one of the big questions I had early on was, how the heck do I figure out, how do I get clear, right? How do I get clear on what I'm working toward? And I don't know that there's a 100% foolproof way to figure that out. But what has worked for me, and what I think is a useful tool for other people, is to figure out what you don't want, because a lot of times it's easier to figure that out than it is to figure out what you do want. And sometimes that does require some experimentation, doing some things maybe outside your comfort zone, or maybe pursuing one of those things that you think you want to find out, do I really want this or not? And I guess a good example would be, I took this, it was a temporary job. It was a stopgap between the snowboard shop that I'd been working at for 3 years and what was going to be later the actual job that I wanted. So I took this job over the summer, ended up going 7 months, and I was installing wire closet shelving. In new builds. This is back in, let's see, it would have been summer 1999. And so homes were popping up all over Douglas County, and we would go bang out whatever, like 8 to 10 homes a day, put all the closet shelving in, 5 days a week, working 10, 12 hours a day. And the money was a pay bump, but by the time I got to the end of that, I went, I definitely don't want to do this. This is this is not for me. I'm not going to do this long term. I need a better plan, and that actually forced me to get really clear on the opposite of some of the things I was doing there, and writing it all down. Like, okay, I want something that's no more than 20 minutes from my house. I want something that has this, right? So that experience helped me to get really clear. And I ended up getting a job that met all of the criteria that I had written down. But that clarity came because of figuring out what I didn't want. And oftentimes the opposite of what you don't want is what you really want. So anyway, that's kind of what I've used, and something that you and I had chatted about as well is trying, not letting what other people want influence you to say that's what I want, right? So it's really easy to get influenced by your neighbors. I've seen this happen with myself. Living next to neighbors, and they're all buying new cars, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, maybe I should buy a new car.
Yeah, that's right.
But wait a second, my car is paid for. It's relatively new. It's fine. I don't need a new car. I don't actually want a new car. But sometimes those things that you see around you, if you're not aware of how they're affecting you subconsciously, it can drive you to make decisions that are not in your best interest and that are not aligned with your values and what you want. So, anyway, what do you think about that, Mark? Have you seen that process play out in your own life?
Oh, I sure have, man. I mean, not only have I seen it play out in my own life, like in my study of persuasion, I've seen that it's one of the most explanatory things. Like, probably the best explanation of persuasion I've seen so far, the nerdy way of saying it, that there's the heuristic systemic model of persuasion, which is based on this idea that because we have limited processing power, we have to use heuristics or shortcuts to make sense of that information, right? And most of the time, these heuristics are actually really good for us. They help us survive, right? If you're one of the examples I like to give is if you're running through the woods and then you see all of your tribe running the opposite way, and they look terrified, probably a good idea to run with them, right? There's probably something there, that's legitimately a threat. And so, I mean, and this explains, by the way, just about every persuasive phenomenon you can think of. I've taught this before as like sort of like a shortcut. If you maybe call it the unified field theory of persuasion, right? Like every theory of persuasion, you can hang on this. So obedience to authority, what I think one of the big major levers, conformity and obedience, probably two of the biggest ones, if not the two biggest. You can easily see how those are heuristics for us. It's like, well, what do I do? Well, let me check with who the expert is. They've probably studied this better than me.
Yeah.
More often than not, probably not a bad idea, right? It's a survival skill. You need heart surgery. You don't have time to take 4 years of medical school and then do an internship as a surgeon, to solve that problem, right?
Yeah.
Maybe good to use a shortcut.
I had my first follow-up appointment today with my surgeon.
I saw that. Yeah.
And he was explaining how it was a complicated procedure, and because there were all these bone chips up here, and I was just like, I am so thankful that you did this surgery.
Yeah.
I would have been miserable without it.
By the way, dude, I saw that picture. You wrote that. So they just sort of like smashed all the little bones together because they weren't big enough to be screwed together.
Yeah, he bundled a bunch of screws out here, 3 screws over here, and then in between the two, he just kind of wrapped the pieces together.
What did he wrap them together with? We're getting a little off track, guys. We'll get back.
He said a suture or something. I assume it's something that is they'll eventually just dissolve or something. But
yeah, hopefully the bones will all fuse back together at some point.
Yeah, but I trusted his opinion, on it, and I'm like, you're the expert here. I'm in a bad place. I just need this fixed. So,
I would have thought stringing together a bunch of bones wouldn't be a good idea, but I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. No, so what I'm doing right now is I'm probably contributing to the nocebo effect. No, actually, I'm pretty sure the guy knows what he's doing. Otherwise, he would not have gone in there. But well, my brother, by the way, he just had a knee replacement surgery.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how much of it was replaced. I followed a little bit. All I care about right now is how do you get this guy back on his feet? And we're doing, some of the recovery stuff. And there are a lot of, wonderful professionals, of course, out there doing these things. And this is why, someone like me who is naturally going to question authority, just because I've seen so many ways that following authority can go wrong.
Right.
Sometimes that trips me up a little bit. Right.
Yep.
But anyway, to bring it back to your point about conformity affecting what people want, I think all of the different persuasive phenomena come into play. And it's a really interesting question, right? If we were to sit down and meditate and really think, I don't know, go on an ayahuasca journey or do Vipassana or whatever it is you got to do, to get in touch with your inner self, would you sit there and say, I really wasn't happy before I bought that new Lexus RX 450h, but now that I have it, I really am. And it took me an ayahuasca journey to figure out. I don't think that's what people figure out when they come back from the Amazon.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
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 And acquisition, what is that called? Hedonic equilibrium or whatever it is, you your level of happiness is temporarily influenced by acquiring something you want. You get like a little bump, but then
Yeah.
you come a little bit later, you just come right back down to your baseline. So you're kind of always at that baseline regardless. And that's like internal,
Yeah.
those external things just give you a little bump up, or maybe, break a clavicle, a little bump down, and then you come back up.
Yeah. I had never heard that term hedonic equilibrium. That makes sense, knowing what hedonism is, and also knowing from experience that, yeah, if you go and chase those highs, whatever they are, you're ultimately going to drop down. And I think it's even worse when you do it with materialistic things, because it's sort of like you have this hole in your heart that's not being filled by anything, and then you see these ads, and the advertisers are very, very clever at the way that they will get you to neurologically associate consumption of whatever luxury thing it is that they're pushing on you with
Right.
some sort of higher state of status or inner peace. And of course, you get those things, and you might feel that for a little bit, when you're driving around in your cool new car, you might feel good, but after a while, it's like, well, wait a minute, this isn't actually giving me what I wanted,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, do you feel like you've, through this process of finding the things that you don't want and identifying them, do you feel like you're at peace now, knowing what you really want?
Yeah, I feel that way. Yeah, I feel that way. I've kind of chosen my path, and I'm pretty locked in on it, and I'm happy with the direction of my life, and I don't sit around usually. I mean, I still have aspirations. I still have things that I'm working toward,
Of
but
course.
those things that I'm working toward are in alignment with who I am and what I want, and so I find fulfillment from that. Um,
Yeah.
and I find fulfillment from my family and daily reading and hobbies and things like that on top of my work. But I enjoy my work, so it's not something that I dread. I don't dread Monday mornings. I like every day of the week.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's a good sign that you're doing it right. It's really interesting. Ever since you and I had this conversation about this, I've been thinking there is room for something inside the whole Simpleology pathway to address this, and it's kind of interesting. I had always addressed it in a very different way, and that was that you may not really figure out what you really want, right?
Mhm.
And it may be transient.
Mhm.
And a lot. I remember and I don't want to speak negatively of this, because some Simpleology supporters have sold the idea of finding your passion being
Mhm.
this big giant lever in your life, and I think that there's a lot of truth to that. But often when people say it, it's like what they say is, well, just find your passion and everything will sort itself out.
Mm.
And the thing that made me struggle with it was I found that I could be passionate about all sorts of things,
Oh yeah.
and that sometimes I would deliberately flip the passion switch on for myself when there was something that I knew was going to do some objectively good thing for me. And I was like, well, I want what this process is going to give me. I really hate doing this,
Mm.
right? So like I still don't like ice baths, right? Especially the first 15 seconds of
Yeah.
the ice bath. I don't know if I'm ever going to get over that, right? But I train myself to love the process. Like I have a little thing, a little ritual that I go through where I just don't hesitate, and I say certain words to myself, and they're not G-rated words. I don't know if I should repeat them here or not, but but I'll say it. It's like, get in there, mother effer,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
go, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I literally, when I go to, well, right now where I do it I'm not in where I normally am right now. I'm visiting relatives, but where I normally am these days, I have this big giant tub. And when I get into the room where the giant tub is, I say that to myself and I don't hesitate. And I prepare myself for the few seconds of just absolute, excruciating, like it's not pleasant.
Right.
But 10, 15 seconds into it, that goes away. and I wouldn't say I like it, but I can handle it. And I associate myself with the wonderful feeling afterwards, which is, well, I feel good about myself that I toughed it out.
Yep.
I think that there is an objective physiological response going on. Like you pump out these hormones, and I'm pretty sure there's all kinds of chemical stuff going on that feels great.
Yeah.
But I had to train myself to do this, right? So inside Simpleology, what we say is like, just pick something, right? Pick one, even a small thing. As long as you're moving forward, you're going to get a lot of the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But you had me thinking about this more deeply, and I think maybe I didn't give it a full and complete thing, because perhaps through the process of elimination, you can actually find out, well, I don't want all these things. What's left over?
Mm-hmm.
What do you, am I oversimplifying the process, or do you think that?
No, I don't think you're oversimplifying it. I think it is a process of elimination, and it's not necessarily like eliminating one thing only. Maybe when you eliminate one thing,
Mm,
by extension, you're eliminating a whole host of things.
right.
So for me, when I eliminated wire closet shelving, I
Yeah.
essentially eliminated all the trades.
Right.
I was like, I'm not going to be in construction. Well, not all the trades, but
Mm,
construction in particular. I was like, I don't want to be framing houses. I don't want to be doing drywall, carpeting. I just didn't want to do any of it. And I knew myself too that from an early age I wanted to be a writer, and so that always like was a seed in my mind. And so throughout middle school, high school, and then the 1 year of college that I did, I pursued that, right?
mm,
So writing was always kind of in the mix.
yeah.
And by pursuing that, I found out I enjoyed it. I loved it. I wanted to keep doing it. So I think you can discover things that you don't want and things that you do want simultaneously as you're taking steps forward, right?
Mm.
So, but yeah, it is somewhat simple. I mean,
I'm kind of refining this as you say this. It's like, maybe I'm going to try to restate it in a way, and let me know if this is like close to what's in your mind when you say it. So obviously we can't have the expectation of like list all the things, right? Because maybe they're infinite. Right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
so, but we do know that our unconscious mind does a far better job of processing things than our conscious mind does. And maybe when we eliminate certain things, we're feeding inputs into our unconscious mind that will allow it to formulate a better hypothesis about what we really want.
mm,
What do you think? Is that closer to, like, if we were to methodologize this?
yeah. No, I think that's good. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, let's keep this conversation going, and let's check in with what everybody is saying about this. Um, I'm curious to see what the tribe thinks about it. We've got some interesting comments here on social. By the way, if you guys are watching this on social and you're not a Simpleology member, if you can sign up at simpleology.com, and if you log into my.simpleology.com, we will take your questions with a higher priority than the comments just coming in on social. I'm just going to show some of the social comments here that we've got coming in while we figure out which questions to take. Let's see. We've got one from Kurt Summers here. He has Kurt, by the way, for those of you guys who are not familiar with our lives, Kurt has been on a couple of our hot seats. Really interesting dude who had a near-death experience and talks about how that experience informed him. He's always got really insightful comments and questions. He said, does consistent daily action help someone discover what they really want? So do they first need complete clarity before action? How is that like going live with an MVP digital product without design perfection baked in? Really good one.
Yeah, that's a good question. To address his first one, yes, consistent daily action is helpful for discovering what you really want. It's easier to probably said this or heard this, but it's easier to steer a car in motion than it is to steer a parked car. You know,
Yep.
you ever tried to turn the steering wheel when you're parked? Pretty hard to do.
Not easy.
So yeah, consistent daily action, I think, is definitely part of it. Is some experimentation, things like that.
Yeah.
Do you first need complete clarity before action? No, you don't. You know, my son, he just graduated high school, and we were trying to figure out what he was going to do because he wasn't going to college, doesn't want to go to college, and I'm totally fine with that. And so we lined up a plumbing apprenticeship for him. So he's doing an apprenticeship that lasts 2 years before he can go to the next level.
Yeah.
And within the, he didn't know if he wanted to do that, but he had to do something. Like, he had to kind of say, okay, who am I? What do I like to do? Is it likely that I'll enjoy this? And so he went out there and started doing it. And so far he's loved it. He's really enjoyed the work.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't really know one way or the other unless he actually did it.
Yep.
I told him, dude, just do it. Just try it out. If you hate it, you don't have to keep doing it. Now you know what you don't want to do. Now you'll have motivation to find out something that's the opposite of that, that's different than that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think, it's always good hearing you tell your parenting stories because, you hear so many parenting gone wrong stories out there. And it's like, it seems like you're giving the right message to these guys. So many people get stuck on hesitation. Not being a parent, I don't know, but I can only hypothesize from all the people that I've spoken to that most of us are getting parented wrongly in that respect because hesitation is so pervasive. It seems to be, one of those top 3 to 5 things that I see blocking people. They're overthinking stuff. Like, hey, I've seen that overthinking process last for years in people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Or what a traditional path, a more traditional path for a lot of kids coming out of high school is they don't know what they want to do. And so what is the default decision? Well, you go to college.
Yeah.
And then so they start going to college, and then what happens? They repeat all the same crap they just learned in high school for 2 years.
Yeah.
They're just taking gen ed stuff. They're partying. They're getting really no closer to figuring out what they want to do.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they'll declare a major and then 2 years in go and switch it. Right.
Yeah.
Because, now I realize that's not what I want to do anymore. But now you're 2 years in and tens of thousands of dollars out the door, maybe debt.
Right.
Just to me, it's just a bad way to take that next step of your life unless you have super clarity on, I want to be a doctor or I want to be a mechanical engineer. Like if that is like, you're so driven and so clear on that, then go for it. But majority of students are not like that coming out of high school.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that whole system is designed to make everything a bunch of high stakes decisions, right?
Yeah.
When you pick the courses that you're going to go to, and they start feeding this to you all the way in high school, right? When you sign up, because you didn't sign up for courses, I don't think in middle school or, but I remember, I think a lot of people know my story of not having gone to school that much and being mostly self-taught. But when the times that I did go, I remember suddenly at high school, okay, you got to pick some classes, right? And if you pick the wrong class, you're going to suffer for a while, right? And it's like you got to go through a whole trimester, a whole semester of having picked the wrong course. And maybe that contributes to how some people are going through life of like, I'd better think very deeply about this rather than just, trying something and seeing how it goes.
Yeah. I remember I signed up for a C++ course because I thought, hey, maybe I'll look into programming. And the teacher was this older gentleman. I don't know his age, but I would probably guess around 70. He did not enunciate or speak clearly. Day one, he throws up a program on the projector and he goes, okay, so here's this and here's that. And then you do this. And I'm like, I was I had no idea what he was talking about. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is like intro to C++. Like, can we start with the basics instead of just throwing a
Yeah.
whole written program up there and like, tell me what I'm looking at? It was so bad. I dropped the class the next day. I was like, there's no way I can, this is unpassable.
Right. 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 And the class didn't have any prerequisites. So he
No.
knew that some of the people coming in were like,
Oh.
never wrote a line of code.
I'd never written a line of code, and I was so confused. I was out. But that was another case of, figuring out what I don't want. Now, maybe programming could have been an option, but given my exposure there, I'm like, I do not want this class. I'm out.
Maybe if he had a better teacher.
Maybe if I had a better teacher. Exactly. Yeah.
Might have been a different course of a different life course.
Yeah. Here's a question from Rodney Durant. Hi, Mark and Ryan. What is the single best practical test you use to know whether the why behind a goal is strong enough to sustain long-term action rather than just being driven by short or medium-term motivation? It's a pretty deep question.
Yeah, it is.
What do you think, Mark?
I might be the wrong guy to ask about this, right? Because I mean, I still, I don't know if I've figured out what I want to do when I grow up. I'm 57, and I think not having kids and not being married is probably something that might slow you down from development. I think when people do get married and have kids, the ones who are doing it right, if you ask me, probably flip some switch in their head and suddenly start taking things a little bit more seriously. Not having stakes like that in my life, I maybe it's very different. But,
Yeah.
But I would have to say that, looking back at what you've said, I do think that I have gone through a de facto process of elimination in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found things that will motivate me more than others. And I think maybe to answer his great question, it's maybe you're not going to know until you face the difficulty required, because it's often said that you don't get I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this. I've heard this notion phrased in many, many different ways, and it's that anything that you want, you can have it as long as you're willing to pay the price. And in the process of trying to get it, you will come face to face with the price.
Mm-hmm.
And is it big enough? Well, when it comes time to pay the price, are you willing to pay it?
Right.
And if you're not, maybe it's not big enough. But I'm hedging that with a lot of maybes, because I think simultaneously it's also possible that maybe you want something well enough, but you haven't trained your mind enough to accept that anything that's big, that's extraordinary, beyond the norm, is going to require extraordinary effort and difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah. An idea that popped up for me as you were talking about that is from Paula Pant. She's a real estate investor, and her website, I think, and her kind of slogan is afford anything. So, and the idea behind it is you can afford anything you want, but you can't afford everything.
Yeah.
And it's a similar thing, related to what you're talking about. You can do anything you want, but you can't do everything, you have to get really clear on what that anything is. And usually it's only like a handful of things.
She phrased it really well. I've expressed a similar idea, not as eloquently phrased as she put it, right? I mean, if you think about it, it's obviously true, because we don't have infinite time.
Right.
We don't have infinite energy.
Right.
We've got to leverage our resources toward something that's actually going to be meaningful, right? Something that's going to satisfy us in some way.
Yeah. I wanted to circle back to Rodney's question, and he was asking for a single best practical test. And so I think I have one that might be useful. And that is to ask the question why at least 3 times. So when you're you set this goal, right? Whatever the goal is, I want to make $1 million, which is kind of vague and whatever.
Yeah.
But why do I want $1 million?
Yeah.
So I can feel secure. Well, why
Mm,
do you want to feel secure?
mm,
Because when I was a kid, my parents were
yeah.
poor, and you know what I mean. And so you
Yep.
and so you like dig down. So you ask that question why at least 3 times to each answer. You give an answer and then well, why, and then another answer why. You start to peel it back and get to the real source of the motivation, and that motivation is going to be a lot stronger than the first surface level reason you gave.
Mm.
Usually that first reason is like kind of just not very motivating.
You're kind of blowing my mind here a little bit because I have used exactly that process for copywriting. And in
Mm,
fact, when I'll teach people about copywriting, I'll often say, okay, so if you find what somebody wants and you know enough about copywriting to know to address that, what I'll tell them is scratch it, right? And
yeah.
keep scratching, okay, you want that. Why do you want that? What I had never done is actually applied that to my own psychology.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah. But
So
it's a sound concept, right?
it really
For
is.
copy and for personal reflection.
After this, I might have to meditate on this a little bit. Maybe it'll help me figure out what I want to do when I grow up. So.
That's funny.
Yeah. So Rodney, great question, man. We've got Bob Burr coming in here saying hello. Hey, Bob. I think he might be new. I haven't seen him here before. Allison Hill is asking, she's making a statement. Figuring out what you don't want is the key. The laundry department at Dillard's, never again. LOL. Okay. Oh yeah, so many wrong things I want to say. They sell lingerie in Dillard's? Like, okay. So, my goodness.
That's funny.
Kai Barnwall is saying pages 1 to 6 is missing in Simpleology 101. How to get Kai, I have not heard that. I hope that's not true. Send an email to support@simpleology.com if you would, good sir. And they hopefully will get that sorted out. Hopefully all this time that the new version of Simpleology 101 does not have pages missing. I would hope to think we would have heard about that by now. Anyway, Kai, we're going to get that sorted out for you one way or the other. Ryan, you want to take there's a comment from Kurt there.
Yeah, Kurt says, not Q&A, but FYI, when I had surgery in 1975 for femur compound fracture, the doctor decided after 1 month it was healing slower than he would like. He wanted to operate again, break the femur again, and insert a titanium rod. I had another orthopedic surgeon for a second opinion, and we went with 2 more months of traction. Now there's a big lump of compressed bone on my femur, but it's not bothering me after 50 years. Whew. Femur is the most painful bone break in the body, I'm told. So, ouch.
That's one I don't want to know empirically.
No, not at all.
Yeah. I guess it would make a lot of sense because it's so load bearing, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's probably very difficult to get around the load you're going to put on it. Kurt, you made me think of something that's very interesting. When you tell the story of this doctor telling you try something else before going and doing this procedure. Speaking of orthopedic surgery and orthopedic surgeons, Dr. Sean Baker, he's the guy who really first popularized the carnivore diet. There were, of course, people doing it long before him. Dr. Anthony Chafee would say that was, in fact, our species-specific diet for a long time. Very interesting conversation. I do very well on the carnivore diet. And one of the things that pushed me in that direction was Sean Baker, as an orthopedic surgeon, started hearing about how diet could affect things. And he got onto the idea that carnivore could really be healing. And he would start telling his patients to eat carnivore 2 months before the surgery. And then a week or two before, they would say, "Hey, my pain in my knee is gone," and he would say, "Well, okay, surgery canceled," right? And I don't think in Ryan's case it would have been smart to say, "Well, let's see what happens with this shattered clavicle." You know, I don't know if any diet's going to fix that one. But it is interesting to hear that there are a lot of doctors out there that are not trying to push on you the thing that they're selling, right?
Well, I mean, you read his book, it sounds like, and I did too. He was, if I'm remembering correctly, their most successful surgeon in terms of volume. He was doing the most surgeries. He was making a lot of money for the clinic that he worked at.
Yeah.
And then when he changed his approach and started helping patients to lose weight, to mitigate the joint pain, and then canceling surgery, they got mad at him. And then remember, I don't know if you remember this, but he lost his license, he got banned, all this stuff. Like they waged a campaign against him because he was dealing with issues in a more natural way.
I didn't actually read the book.
Oh, okay.
I consumed a lot of podcasts and did a lot of side research. But yeah, actually, I probably should read his book. I mean, that being the seminal one, at least in the popularization. But I did hear a little bit of that story about how I had since forgotten that. But it's not surprising knowing what we know about them. I hate to say it, if there are any medical professionals on now, I don't mean to malign the whole profession or all the people in it, but a lot of people are aware of the corruption that's involved there now.
It's just shocking because he was still doing surgeries. He was just doing a lot less of them. And in those cases where it wasn't necessary, he was giving them alternatives to avoid it. Yeah.
Well, speaking of interesting terms and labels for things, there is this notion of perverse incentives. And who knows if I think there's probably more to it than perverse incentives at play. Whole other conversation. Maybe we can do a conspiracy rabbit hole dive on that one.
Oh, yeah.
On a live hangout. That might take several hours. But yeah, that's man, it's a shame that the medical system doesn't work that way. Foreshadowing alert. I just sent Ryan a message earlier today about a topic. Speaking of industries that don't operate the way we have been taught, there is an interesting internet phenomenon that's occurred over the last few weeks of a legal battle, and that's the only hint I'm going to give. And one of the insights that we will reveal when we talk about this, probably next week, is that the legal system demonstrably does not work the way you think it does. And we'll unpack this either on Monday or Thursday next week, and hopefully you guys will enjoy that. We've got one from George Holmes here. George says, "Just a thought, be aware not to eliminate what you don't like by putting things in that you just fear doing or fear getting started."
Yeah. That's good. One of those might be public speaking, right? Don't eliminate it just because you fear it. And I don't think I've read a story of any public speaker who just took to it like a duck to water. They all have fear and anxiety about public speaking, right? And I have in the past too. I was just reading. I'm currently reading. He Did What by Drayton Bird.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Drayton Bird is,
I love Drayton.
Yeah, Drayton's awesome. For those who don't know, Drayton Bird is probably the oldest working copywriter in the world.
Maybe.
He's into his 80s. He used to work with David Ogilvy.
Yep.
And in fact, Ogilvy and Mather purchased his agency many years ago.
Yep.
But he writes that when he first started public speaking, that he was terrified of it. And when they were starting the agency, they said, well, he made a promise that he would do anything to get this thing off the ground. And so then his partners came to him and said, well, you got to do it. You promised that you do anything. You got to go do this talk. And he's like, oh. So I think he took 2 drinks. he was very into alcohol for many years, but
Yeah.
2 drinks, liquid courage, and got up there on stage. Hardly remembered what he said, but apparently people liked it enough that they wanted him to do more speaking. And he says he's never completely gotten over it, but he's gotten better at it. So, and he's a great speaker. So,
Yeah, he really is. And hopefully there was no state dependent memory there. So you might have heard of that phenomenon. If I knew a guy who was a weed smoker, and he told me like, well, because of state dependent memory, I'm going to study high and I'll take my tests high. And I was like, bro, there's a lot of justification going on here, you know?
That's wild. So like the idea that you can only remember certain information when you're in a certain state.
Right.
Oh.
Right. So I was thinking for Drayton's case, I was like, I hope that, you know, magical speaking ability does not only manifest when you've had a few in you. I'm pretty sure that's not the case. He wouldn't be the oldest living copywriter, I think.
Yeah, not anymore. He laid off. His liver couldn't take it anymore, but
yeah. Well, I drank. I can't judge anybody for that. I certainly drank quite a bit when I was in the military.
Yeah.
But I hardly ever now. It just doesn't affect me. But I had a similar thing with public speaking. In fact, I was literally terrified of it. Even though when I was in the intelligence community, I did some work, you know, as an interpreter. I could handle being an interpreter, like, you know, U.S. Army General, Republic of Korea Army General. I could translate in between those two guys, and there could even be a group of people standing around. But you put me on a stage, and I literally would shake. My hands would shake. There's something about, I mean, I could do it in a group, in a circle, that's fine. But on a stage, suddenly I would shake. And I had to flip that switch in my head deliberately. And I studied up about it, and I started using visualization. I got invited to speak at an event, and people had the assumption that I was a very polished professional speaker, and I certainly was not at the time. And I was like, well, I'm not going to lie, but I'm also not going to turn this opportunity down. So I was like, okay, all right, buddy, you made your bed, sleep in it. So I learned about, you know, how to actually, so visualization, a lot of people hear different theories about it, but there is an action outside of bro science, you know, self-help gurudom. There is actually visual motor rehearsal, I think is what it's called. And, you know, there are studies about how guys who do the visual motor rehearsal, if I'm using the correct term, and physically train would get better performance than the people who just physically trained, right?
Yeah.
And then I heard, okay, so you can actually use that same phenomenon and prepare yourself for things. So I created this little ritual where I went to the place where I was going to do the public speaking the day before, got on the stage and looked out at the audience. And I was like, okay, well, looked out at the empty seats at the time, and got that idea burned in my head, and then visualized myself the night before walking up the stage, feeling amazing. I came up with reframes, you know, like, you're not nervous, you're excited, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
It was really good. And I'll tell you what, man, it worked like magic. I still had a little bit of nerves, of course, going up there, but I was able to reframe it.
Yep.
And I also told myself, if anything goes wrong, it's okay. Try to roll with it. And over time, I've gone from being totally terrified of public speaking up to, I was at an event with like 5,000 people there, and the organizer, I wasn't speaking at the event, but the organizer says, "Hey, Mark, would you like to get up on stage because one of our speakers canceled?" I said, sure, why not? And I said, well, when would you like me to do it? He says, he's supposed to go on in like 5 minutes. And I said, all right, what would you like me to talk about? Anything you want. And I said, all right. And I was walking up the stairs. I was thinking, I guess I've gotten over the fear of public speaking.
Yeah. Yeah. Really.
And I literally, it didn't even faze me. Like, I had to actually get myself excited about it, because I was like, okay, I better not go up there with low energy. You know, I better.
Yeah. You got to be excited for the audience, bring that energy for them.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
a cool story. That's a great story. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. And I think actually that the speaking of public speaking, that idea of the energy that you have, that might I think it was a Tony Robbins, a rare Tony Robbins recording where he was talking about that. And he was saying what before he got up on stage, he would think about like projecting energy into the audience. And
Mm.
that was something that helped him get out of his own head, was he was thinking about, okay, what effect can I create in the audience instead of what do they think about me?
Yes.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's the hardest part. Like you said, is getting out of your own head and not thinking about what they're seeing, you know,
Mhm.
and only thinking about what you're delivering to them, you know,
Yeah.
the value that you're giving. Because as soon as you like flip that and you start looking inward, that's when bad things happen.
Oh, dude, I'll tell you, I've had people in the audience. Like I remember I this was long after I had gotten over my fear of public speaking and had done quite a few. I remember there's this one guy who was just I was at this event in Thailand, and it was kind of a smallish event, you know, like 50, 100 people, something like that. And everybody kind of got to know each other.
Hmm.
And there was this one guy who just had this hostility toward me. And I latched onto him for some reason while I was on the stage. I was like, this guy's kind of pissing me off, you know? And it was not good, man. I have to say, like, I kind of got into it with him a little bit because he actually verbally started, you know, kind of fighting with me a little
Oh,
bit.
heckling, a heckler.
A heckler. He was legit a heckler, right? Yeah. At an event where people are learning about marketing.
Wow.
And I just rolled with it. And I think I tried to make it entertaining, but I got to a point I realized I can't keep this up for too long. So I just demolished him a little bit and had a little fun with it and made everybody laugh. And I was like, okay, dude, I don't think everybody's here to see us fight. Like everybody out here, would you like me to fight with him? Or would you like me to teach you how to persuade people with language? And they're like, please, for the love of God, get back.
Yeah, that's good. And that probably had to make you feel good too, you know?
It did a little bit, but I could feel like this could go really wrong. I think if I didn't flip it around, it
Yeah.
might have brought like the whole energy down because I could
Yeah.
sense that that potential was there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a disruptive person in a classroom. If you don't deal with them, the whole
Yeah.
class suffers. So
That's right. And
yeah.
it's not going to stop because you're gonna empower them
Yeah.
if you don't shut them down.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
George Holmes had a couple of follow-up comments. He said, I have a great story about my own first public speaking to over 5,000 shareholders in a blue chip company.
Ooh, that's awesome.
But that's an interesting story. And he also says, how to find what you really want, one man's view. When you have enough ongoing credit in this bankrupt world economy and all your material wants, then you really find what you actually want.
I'll read that again. I want to make sure I'm processing this right.
Yeah, when you have enough ongoing credit in this bankrupt world economy and all your material wants, then you really find out what you actually want. So I guess maybe that's kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing. Like once you've gotten beyond a certain level of comfort acquisition, then you're free to kind of finally figure out what you really want. I don't know if I'm interpreting that correctly, but that's what came to mind.
It certainly, yeah. Like after you said that, I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I'm curious about. I don't know if he's making some other comment there about the economy, but funny side note about Maslow. You know, a lot of people quote the old Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow actually changed the hierarchy later in life. It was self-actualization was on the top in some of his earlier works, and then later on he changed it to this notion of transcendence.
Oh.
And it's an interesting conversation. It kind of fits in with our conversation of what you really want. What Maslow obviously had some evolving thoughts about that, and I think that's probably natural for all of us too, as we get experience that what we want may evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just your circumstances change how you view things for sure. What you really want when you're broke is probably a lot different than when you're well off.
Yeah, that's right. I just want a sandwich at that point, right? So, yeah,
I've been broke before, so
grew up that way, and it's
no fun.
yeah, it's not fun. Rodney Durant said in response to the feedback we gave him, he said, "Great answer. So peel back like an onion to move away from the surface level reasons for the goal." That's credit to Ryan for that one, which is really awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, this is a great one from Kurt Summers. He said, actually, this accident for my broken femur was a situation resulting from the near-death experience, the NDE. Um, so the second doctor had done my grandparents' hip replacement surgery. Carnivore diet makes lots of sense for younger muscle-building adults. I'm using Mayo Clinic diets for Mediterranean diet and high cholesterol. That for me is mainly how I react to portion size for success. I was completely healed back in the day. Speaking of, are you willing to make a choice? Then are you ready to pay the price? I actually had asked to enter into Bud's training. If you guys are not familiar with what Bud's training is, I'll unpack that in a second after I read his whole question. I actually had asked to enter into Bud's training, but was already assigned core school. I'll still be working on Spec Ops marketing, but Simpleology Samurai skills are also helpful. That's awesome. You guys were on that webinar with me and Matt Basak last night. Do you mind my asking if your Spec Ops training was a voluntary choice on your part? So I was not trained in Spec Ops. I worked with Spec Ops guys. So I was in the intelligence community. So when I went in, they give you this thing called the Defense Language Aptitude Battery, which is to determine whether or not you have the capacity to learn a foreign language. And my recruiters told me, hey, if you get a good score on that, you'll train in any language you want. And I thought, oh, I'm going to learn French. I'm going to go to France and meet all the French ladies. And, and sure enough, the recruiters lied. Anybody who's gone to a recruiter probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. I think they lie to pretty much everybody who goes in the military. And so the way it really works is if you take the Defense Language Aptitude Battery and you score high, they're going to give you a difficult language. It makes sense because you're not going to put people who score low into very difficult languages, and they break the languages into 4 difficulty levels. And I got like an almost perfect score in this. I don't know how I got that. I guess I lucked out somehow, genetically, epigenetically, or whatever. I guess I can learn languages. And they're like, okay, well, there's 4 of the most difficult ones. And so when they were reading out the languages, they told me Korean. And I was like, I think I remember hearing about Korea on that TV show MASH. That's like all I knew about it, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I went to that and then did training, in the intelligence community. I was in signals intelligence, but I politicked my way into other jobs and did work with some Spec Ops guys. I did not do specific Spec Ops training, and I was not a Spec Ops dude, but I worked around them and with them, in various missions. But for those of you guys who don't know what Kurt was referring to, BUDS, the Navy SEALs, they have this training camp, basic underwater demolition / SEAL. And SEAL is sea, air, and land. And the BUDS course is maybe the most difficult military school. The Rangers, a lot of guys who pass BUDS have a hard time with Ranger school. There are other schools out there that are redonkulously hard, but BUDS is famous for the Hell Week that they go through. You're up with about maybe 1 or 2 hours of sleep for a full week.
Oh,
yeah, and they're just brutalizing you the whole time, like just wearing you down to a nub. And that's after I think it's like 3 weeks of them weeding people out.
yeah.
And then the Hell Week is like the last threshold. Yeah. Most of the people who get past Hell Week can make it through, but at the end of it, only like I think maybe 1/4 of the people who are already pre-qualified actually make it to the end.
My friend, he wanted to be a SEAL. He made it to Hell Week. Then he ended up with a cut on his hip, like a small laceration or something. And then during Hell Week, they had to crawl through, mud, sewage, whatever, and it got infected, and his hips swelled up to the size of a basketball, and he had to bail out. It was, right at the end, but didn't make it because of that.
Right at the end. So he had gone through the whole thing.
Yep.
And they didn't like recycle him.
I don't recall. I don't think they did. Yeah. So,
dude, that's man. Like you gotta tell me who that dude is so I can just tell him, hey man, I'm sorry to hear that. He probably doesn't want to hear that, but man, I feel bad for that guy because that's
yeah.
Could you imagine?
Unlucky.
Very unlucky.
But by the way, two of my brothers, not both, I have more than two, but two of my brothers went through DLI, and both learned Arabic. One ended up stationed in Augusta and listened to Arabic full time for 5 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay. What branch were they in? Were they Army, Navy?
Ben was Army. Justin was originally Marines, and then he got out, but then he went back in to the DLI. I don't know if he did that as a reservist or I don't remember the exact circumstances of how he went back. Yeah. But originally he was a Marine. So
okay. Yeah. Wow, that's cool. I didn't know that. And they did Arabic, so they must be smart dudes because Arabic is among the four of there are only four Cat 4 languages. It's Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Arabic. So wow, that's cool. Very cool. And both of them got it.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. And if the Army guy, if you say he was listening to it, he was probably in signals intelligence as well. So does the word 98 golf mean anything to you? Did he say that?
I don't think he did, but he had a security clearance for the duration, and currently different field, but still with the security clearance.
Please ask him what his MOS was. I'm curious, and what year he went through and all that, because it's fun. It's not a giant community, and a lot of guys know each other. And very cool. All right, and with that, we're getting close to the end here, so we should probably wrap it up unless we've got some. I think we've gone through most of the really good ones. For those of you guys who are not Simpleology members, I'm going to throw up a link here. If you guys are interested in getting into Simpleology at the business class level, you can start a 7-day free trial of that. You go to simpleology.com/7-day BC. Again, that's simpleology.com/7-day BC. And you can start your free trial, and then you guys can ask questions there. And we can even put you on the hot seat. Some of the guys that we've taken questions from here have been on the hot seat before. Some of you guys may have seen Kurt on his hot seat talking about his business. And when you're on the hot seat, we can talk about whatever you want. Obviously, the primary thing is to help you sort out whatever you're going through with your business. But, we've done sales copy breakdowns. We've done strategy breakdowns, figuring out whatever it is that's got you stuck in your business. Getting on the hot seat is a scary thing. Probably, it's like public speaking times 10 because we're broadcasting all over. But it's very rewarding for everyone. So if you guys want to try that out, or even if you just want to go through the training, and we do have very, very specialized tools and training programs specifically tailored towards business owners to help you get what you want with your business in the high-me way, high impact, minimal effort. Would that be kind of cool? Instead of doing the things that are hard and not getting results, if you did things that were easy and got results, makes sense to me. But if you want to try that out, just go to simpleology.com/7-day BC if you're not already in there. And with that, we'll wish you guys all a beautiful day or night wherever you are. And we will see you guys on the next live hangout. Take care, guys. Boom.